What do billion-dollar stealth bombers, fake honey shipments at international ports, and, I mean, the local water bill for your hometown all have in common?
That is a very good question.
Right. Well, today we are looking at the hidden machinery of the United States government. Welcome to a special edition of our deep dive titled Congress in Context.
Yeah, glad to be here for this one.
Our goal today is to take a massive stack of recent congressional sources, like legislative highlights, committee actions, procedural moves, and extract the vital nuggets of knowledge from them. We're going beyond the headlines to look at the structural reality of how these policies actually function in your daily life.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. And a quick housekeeping note before we get into the heavy machinery here. This deep dive is a completely independent project, so if you find value in this ad-free civic education infrastructure we've built, you can find a Buy Me a Coffee link located right in your app's show notes to help support the production.
And you know what's fascinating here is how seemingly disconnected bills paint a comprehensive picture of national priorities. Right. When you look past the political rhetoric and focus purely on the raw mechanics of these bills, you really start to see the underlying architecture. You see exactly how the government is attempting to structurally engineer outcomes, whether that is on a global battlefield or just in a rural medical clinic.
Yeah, the contrast is wild, and we're going to start with the most fundamental constitutional duty of Congress, which is national defense. On the table right now, we have H.R. 8800.
The NDAA.
Right, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2027. Mechanically, this is the massive overarching bill that authorizes the existence and funding for, Department of Defense military activities, construction, and even Department of Energy defense programs.
It's massive. But at the exact same time, moving through the very same legislative body, we have HCon Res 89 and SJ Res 180.
Okay, and those are?
These are concurrent and joint resolutions explicitly designed to terminate the use of United States armed forces in hostilities with Iran unless Congress issues a formal declaration of war.
So they are funding the military, but simultaneously trying to put a mechanical check on it.
Exactly. And we have to look closely at the mechanical carve-outs in those Iran resolutions. They do not mandate an immediate blanket withdrawal of all troops from the region.
Right. That would be practically impossible anyway.
Exactly. Instead, they explicitly maintain statutory exceptions allowing forces to defend themselves, or allied states, against imminent attacks. And they structurally permit the continued presence of forces that are not actively engaged in combat operations.
The best way I can visualize this is like by comparing Congress to a corporate board of directors and the executive branch to the CEO.
Okay, I like that.
Right. So on one hand, the board is approving this multi-billion-dollar corporate budget for the year through the NDAA. They're authorizing the funds to keep the lights on and the factories running. But simultaneously, they're pulling the CEO aside and rewriting their operational contract to restrict unilateral actions.
Yeah, that's spot on.
They are saying, here is the massive budget you asked for, but we are placing a hard freeze on the corporate credit card when it comes to entering this specific hostile market. You need our explicit recorded vote for that.
That corporate board analogy captures the tension perfectly. Structurally, Congress is separating the foundational authorization of funding, which is the NDAA, from the dynamic statutory checks on war powers.
Because they have to, right?
Yeah, they build it this way because military readiness requires long-term persistent funding, whereas actual combat deployment requires immediate operational oversight. By decoupling the budget from the deployment authorization, Congress ensures the military remains fully funded while simultaneously pulling the mechanical levers of the War Powers Resolution.
To essentially reassert their article-ocatory constitutional authority over specific conflicts.
Precisely.
And it is clear that their definition of national defense is expanding far beyond just traditional troops and tanks. For instance, we have H.R. 1939. This authorizes $20 million annually from fiscal year 2025 through 2029 to support United Nations or African Union peacekeeping forces in Sudan.
But there are strict conditions attached to that money.
Yeah, it strictly prohibits any of those funds from reaching parties responsible for human rights abuses. The funding comes with built-in compliance strings. And then on the digital front, we have Senate Bills 4230 and 4429.
Right, the cybersecurity bills.
Exactly. These address identifying stolen sensitive data held by foreign entities, and they establish strict export controls and licenses on advanced cybersecurity materials.
And if we isolate S4429, that cybersecurity bill, it specifically requires the Secretary of Commerce to conduct stringent risk assessments before granting any export licenses for these advanced materials.
So treating digital tools like weapons.
Exactly. Congress is acknowledging that securing the nation's borders structurally includes securing digital infrastructure. The export of advanced software or encryption hardware is now being regulated using the same statutory frameworks historically reserved for physical munitions.
Oh, wow, that is a massive shift. So if that is how Congress is attempting to secure the nation on a global and digital scale, let's look at how they are addressing domestic resilience, specifically the physical health of citizens in rural America.
This is a huge area of focus right now.
Yeah, we are looking at a stack of healthcare bills, starting with S380. This amends the Public Health Service Act to provide grants for obstetric emergency training and equipment in rural facilities. It targets hospitals that do not even have dedicated maternity wards.
And it establishes a teleconsultation pilot program, too.
Right, and alongside that emergency infrastructure bill, we have S4208, the Rural America Health Corps Act.
Which is essentially a federal beta test. It creates a demonstration program providing up to $200,000 in loan repayments for health professionals who commit to 5 years of service in rural shortage areas.
Wait, I have to challenge this, because we have tried throwing loan forgiveness at doctors for decades, and the data often shows they just leave these rural towns the minute their commitment is up. How is this bill actually changing the mechanics of rural care, rather than just writing a temporary check?
That is the crucial distinction here. It is a structural shift in how the penalty is enforced. With S4208, the loan repayment comes with strict liquidated damages if the medical professional breaches the 5-year agreement.
Meaning what, practically?
Meaning a severe, legally pre-calculated financial penalty that often exceeds the original loan amount if they leave early. This raises an important question regarding how we mathematically incentivize medical professionals.
So it actually hurts them financially to break the contract.
Yes. By attaching these severe financial penalties to early departure, Congress is attempting to engineer long-term retention and behavioral changes in career paths, rather than just funding short-term recruitment.
Okay, that makes sense.
And going back to S380 for a moment, that bill includes a statutory mandate for the Secretary of Health and Human Services to meticulously map maternity ward closures and analyze regional patterns of patient transport.
So they're gathering the data first.
It is a structural data gathering mechanism. You cannot redesign a regional health network until you mathematically prove where the gaps are.
Okay, that reframes it entirely for me. They are trying to build an architecture for rural health, not just apply a temporary financial patch.
Exactly.
And we are seeing similar targeted restructuring in specialized medical research, too. Look at H.R. 8205. This reauthorizes the ALS Act through 2031, but mechanically it expands the definition of Phase 3 clinical trials to include combined Phase 2 and 3 trials.
Which is huge for terminal patients.
Right, because if you are a patient with a terminal illness, traditional phase trials can take years you simply do not have. By statutorily allowing these phases to combine, Congress is cutting the regulatory red tape to get experimental drugs to patients faster.
And then there is S494.
Right, which establishes a national plan for epilepsy to coordinate research and care. And that one has a sunset clause built in for 2035 to force a future review of its effectiveness.
The mechanism of regulatory burden is also shifting in public health broadly. Take S5026, the Preventing Junk Food Marketing to Children Act.
Oh, this one is interesting.
Yeah, this functionally empowers the Federal Trade Commission to treat child-directed junk food advertisements as unfair or deceptive practices, and it mandates health warning labels.
I mean, if you have kids, you know exactly how aggressive those targeted ads are on tablets and television.
Precisely. Mechanically, this shifts the burden of public health enforcement from parents and schools directly onto the advertisers. It utilizes the existing enforcement infrastructure of the FTC to regulate public health at the corporate marketing level.
Okay, so we have looked at the massive scale of global security and the granular redesign of domestic healthcare. Now we need to look at how Congress ensures accountability within these systems. We have H.R. 1722, the Billion-Dollar Boondoggle Act of 2025.
A very aptly named bill.
Very. This requires the Office of Management and Budget to issue public annual reports detailing every taxpayer-funded project that is significantly over budget and behind schedule. But here is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, the contrast here is wild.
Right next to this bill addressing billion-dollar federal contracts, we have H.R. 2162 and H.Res. 1411. the Honey Integrity Act and the Honey Production Act.
The honey legislation is actually a perfect case study in regulatory mechanics.
I am genuinely surprised by this one. Why is Congress spending its time debating the standard of identity for honey alongside billion-dollar defense contracts and massive infrastructure boondoggles?
Well, look at how they're doing it.
I mean, the bill utilizes an artificial intelligence and machine learning predictive targeting model at international ports just to intercept fraudulent honey shipments. And it mandates strict country of origin labeling. It is incredibly heavy-handed for syrup.
It seems heavy-handed until you realize the legislative mechanics are identical to the other accountability bills on the docket.
How so?
Whether it is economically motivated adulteration in agriculture like diluting honey with cheap foreign syrup to undercut American farmers, or tracking dark money in elections, Congress uses the exact same structural tools.
Oh, I see.
They utilize mandatory disclosure, strict auditing thresholds, and data tracking. For example, look at H.R. 9771 and H.R. 9772, the Stopping Foreign Influence in Elections Act, and the Foreign Funding Transparency Act.
Those are the bills imposing massive tax penalties on 501c tax-exempt organizations that accept foreign contributions and then make political donations, right?
Correct. A 501c is a specific IRS tax code designation for nonprofits. These bills impose a 100% tax penalty on the organization for the first offense, and a 200% penalty for the second offense. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanical through line is forced transparency.
That makes a lot of sense.
In the honey bills, they are using predictive AI to audit agricultural supply chains and force accurate labeling at the physical ports. In the tax-exempt bills, they're using the Internal Revenue Code to audit financial supply chains and force transparency regarding foreign political money. Congress is systematically installing automated and financial tripwires across completely different sectors to ensure accountability.
That makes the process much clearer. But it brings up a logistical question for me. We have all these disparate pieces of legislation: defense authorizations, rural health loan penalties, nonprofit tax codes, honey regulations. How do these actually survive the mechanical process of a deeply divided Congress?
That is where the procedural machinery comes in.
Right, which brings us to HRES 1438, a report from the Committee on House Administration from July 20, 2026. This resolution provides for the combined consideration of multiple, totally unrelated bills all at once.
Yes. The resolution bundles H.R. 8800, which is the NDAA we discussed earlier, along with HConRes 113 for the fiscal year 2027 budget.
But it doesn't stop there.
No, it also includes H.R. 8884, which extends the Disability Insurance Demonstration Authority to 2031. It includes H.R. 7008, which legally restricts stock trading for members of Congress, and H.R. 9770 for continuing appropriations to prevent a government shutdown.
It is like the House Rules Committee is acting as a freight train conductor. They are taking completely different train cars, like a massive defense car, a budget car, a congressional stock ban car, and a disability insurance car, and physically coupling them all onto a single locomotive to ensure they cross the finish line together on the House floor.
That is the mechanical reality of how a divided legislature functions in the modern era. When you have highly specialized legislation, like the congressional stock ban, it might not generate enough independent momentum to survive the committee process or floor debates on its own.
Or they just get stalled out.
Exactly. Alternatively, partisan divides constantly threaten to stall basic mandatory government functions. So leadership utilizes bundled resolutions. By attaching must-pass bills, like continuing appropriations in the defense budget, to specialized policy reforms, they structurally mandate a single up-or-down vote on the entire package. It is procedural machinery designed to force compromise.
And speaking of machinery, we also have H.R. 9643, which amends the E-Government Act. This requires federal agencies to manage and specifically identify computer-generated mass comments during the regulatory rulemaking process.
Which is becoming a massive issue.
Right, because for context, when a law is passed, federal agencies have to write the actual rules on how to implement it, and they are required by law to take public feedback during that drafting process.
Right.
So this new bill means agencies actually have to verify to the greatest extent possible whether a public comment is submitted by a real human being or generated by computer software.
Which is a direct structural response to the automation of civic engagement. As agencies draft the rules that implement the laws we are discussing today, they are now statutorily required to filter out engineered, bot-driven consensus and isolate actual individual public feedback. It is an infrastructure upgrade for the regulatory process itself.
That perfectly transitions us into our final section, how Congress is attempting to set the legal framework for the physical infrastructure of the next generation.
Right, looking ahead.
We have S. 1759, the Supersonic Aviation Modernization Act. This bill literally forces the Federal Aviation Administration to revise their rules to allow Mach 1 plus commercial flights, provided the sonic fumes do not reach the ground.
Which is incredible to think about.
Yeah. We have S. 3885, the Aviation Innovation Act, which streamlines FAA certification processes for advanced air mobility.
And right alongside that push for speed in the air, we have S. 4448, the Accelerating Broadband Permits Act, pushing for speed on the ground. That bill requires a public progress dashboard for broadband equity grants and, importantly, sets specific National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, requirements for broadband projects over $5 million.
Let's define that for a second, because NEPA requirements are a huge hurdle.
Yeah.
NEPA essentially forces companies to publicly prove they're not going to cause severe environmental damage to a local area before they start digging trenches and laying down massive fiber optic cables.
Exactly.
So how does Congress mechanically balance this push for rapid technological advancement with the physical toll these technologies take on local communities and natural resources?
They balance it by legislating highly specific guardrails alongside the acceleration. We see the mandate to speed up FAA certifications and broadband permitting, but simultaneously we have S4213, the data center reporting requirements.
And what does that do?
That bill mandates joint regulations to formally report data center energy and water use.
Which is critical, because if a massive AI data center moves into your hometown, the millions of gallons of water they use to cool their servers can just drain the local supply.
Exactly the point. The bill specifically requires tracking the regional impacts of these data centers on water availability and electricity rates for the local consumers living around them.
Oh, so they're watching the utility rates too.
Yes. And it gives the regulation teeth by including a $20,000 per day fine for negligence in reporting. It is a structural trade-off. Congress is utilizing its power to legislate speed for the deployment of physical internet infrastructure, but they're attaching strict resource consumption monitors and daily financial penalties to the data networks required to run that infrastructure.
Wow, so we have covered an incredible volume of legislative work today, from the mechanics of global defense and rural healthcare to the oversight of AI data centers and foreign political funding.
We really ran the gamut.
We did. And it is important to note that a significant portion of congressional activity also involves direct, granular community-level connections. For instance, in this same stack of documents, there were numerous bills purely focused on renaming local post offices to honor historical figures and local heroes.
That happens quite a bit.
Yeah, we saw H.R. 6006 for the Tuskegee Airmen Memorial Post Office, H.R. 4283 for Captain E. Royce Williams, and H.R. 9026 for Detective Luis G. Alvarez. It is a steady reminder of the local mechanics of federal representation.
It grounds the massive structural bills back into the communities they represent.
Right. And if you want to track this activity yourself, you go to congress.gov. You can read the actual text of every single bill we unpack today, track their committee status, look at the vote counts, and find the contact information for your local representatives. Participating in the mechanics of democracy goes far beyond just showing up to vote every few years.
Highly recommend checking it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to explicitly thank you for your time today. And remember, if you want to help keep this ad-free civic education resource sustainable, you can use the Buy Me a Coffee link right in the episode description.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought. Building on H.R. 9643, that bill addressing computer-generated mass comments in the rulemaking process.
Oh, right.
If artificial intelligence and automation can now seamlessly generate thousands of highly articulate regulatory comments and constituent emails in seconds, how will the underlying mechanics of Congress adapt to authenticate the actual organic voice of the citizen over the next decade? When a representative looks at their inbox, how will they know what you actually want?
Wow. That is a mechanical puzzle we are all going to have to watch closely. Keep asking questions and stay curious.